All right. Well, good morning, your Yoga Flow family. My name is Gilbert, and it is a. Is this just starting? All right. Sorry. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Gilbert, and it's a pleasure to get to be a part of this discussion on a beautiful Monday morning here in Nashville. I was just in Florida over the weekend, and it was nice to to get away and spend some time with some college friends, allow myself to, I hadn't been to the beach or anything in a while, but just a nice little step away from just a routine of teaching a lot. But it is good to be back, and it's always good to be discussing different yoga topics. And so today's discussion, talking a little bit about the differences and then this will be mostly like my approach. Obviously, there's going to be different interpretations of what Hatha means and what Vinyasa means. That's going to always have some similar elements, but then just people kind of um, use whatever like serves them best at any given moment. So treating that just like any other practice. And so for me, the way I like to, even before a Vinyasa class, is when I'm kind of addressing the class before things really get moving, is kind of just a preface on how to approach the classes. Um, Again, mostly what I teach is power flow, um, kind of stuff that's very popular around the Nashville area, and a lot of heated power flows. Like all of my classes are hot. Um, so with the power flow classes at the start, what I like to say, especially if there's a handful of new students who aren't very familiar with yoga, hey Mark, or maybe they're just kind of getting into the practice, trying a different style that they might be used to, is in the moments where we're really flowing or we're really moving, and maybe it's a breath to posture movement, part of the sequence, to use that as an opportunity to kind of allow yourself to get out of your head and allow yourself to just move with your breath without being so concerned on, is my warrior one, like, is the alignment proper, like is everything right as we're moving into it, because it's just going to be a more of a touch and go situation. So using that as a meditation in the actual like movement of the postures from one to another, with more of a focus and emphasis on the breath as opposed to, am I getting the pose right? Obviously, we don't want anyone to be unsafe with the movements, and that's why a well thought out flow is just very beneficial. So it's easy when you begin to make those movements for a student to go from one to the other with it feeling pretty like seamless and with it feeling very fluid. At least that's um, the fluidity is something that at least I try to create in the sequences that I offer. So that way a movement feels really smooth from one to the next without it feeling too choppy, or without someone having to second guess, like, how am I going to get from point A to point B um, easily, or how's that going to, I just want to make that as easy as possible for people to get to. Um, and beyond that, I also say that once things slow down, then that's really going to be an opportunity to feel a posture, to be like, okay, I have so many more breaths in this pose. Let's really focus on the alignment. Like, how does this feel in my feet? Am I grounding down? Am I squeezing in? And then I start working, when I'm cueing it, start working my way up through the legs. And then that way it's like, all right, like, what's the positioning now of the hips? And then as I work, starting to lengthen, feeling the lift and the length in the torso, while you're still extending out through the crown of your head. So everything's active, everything's engaged. And with that extra time, it provides the space to give students more information about the posture. And so now you're really helping them tune into what it feels like to be in the pose, to notice the different muscles that are engaged, or maybe focusing on a different, maybe they're reaching differently or turning their palms. So it's like, okay, now really start to explore the pose. How does it feel being in the shape that you're in? And then along with this, you're still telling them to focus on their breath, but it just gives them more of that space. And then there's more of that space to really tap into what's, tap into their experience. and then giving them the opportunity to, okay, if this doesn't feel right, or if it could feel better, what sort of adjustments can you make? So then leaving them in that space to start maybe bending their knees a little more, or maybe shortening their stance, or maybe relaxing their arms a little bit, taking a different hand variation. And so really giving them the space to make the practice their own. And so that is how I look at the two classes. So if I'm going to be teaching a Hatha class, it's not, there might be some flowing elements to it. Like I might go from a mountain pose to like a standing back bend a couple times and then back up to a mountain just to bring in some movement to the posture, really strengthen the back and open across the chest, depending on what we're trying to build towards or work to later on in the practice. But it's not necessarily going to be a longer sequence. It's going to be about one pose at a time. And what can we do in this pose to either strengthen it, to feel it, to open up, and allow. So it could be the same sequence, and I'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. But so it could be the same sequence, but there's just going to be a longer time to be in a pose. And so when I start teaching more of a vinyasa style class, the way I like to set it up would be there might be more of the vinyasa elements as far as like a forward fold, halfway lift, plank to chaturanga, up dog, back down, back to down dog to reset before moving in through another sequence. But before even moving through that, I like to demonstrate or move the students through the flow beforehand. And so, again, not holding the poses nearly as long, maybe let's say anywhere from up to like 5 breaths, 7 breaths if I'm really giving a lot of information that first time through. But it's more so just like, all right, here's the space that we're going to like touch on, get a feel for it. And then once we start moving, it's like try to come back to this place and then move on to like the next one with your breath. And with vinyasa classes, I'd say try to keep within 5 to 7 postures because you don't want to make it too difficult for one if you're not looking at anything or keeping any notes for yourself to remember. And you want it to be accessible enough for the students to where they're not getting lost in case their breath rhythm is slower than yours, or maybe their breath is faster than what you're cueing for. And sometimes students will move further along, or maybe they'll have to lag behind. But again, allowing them the space to move through their own breath and then the space to, yeah, to really feel things through as they begin to move. And then it's always nice to provide a little home base. So whether that is your down dog, following a sequence to come reset, and then maybe move through it like a few times. And so if I'm doing a vinyasa class, there's typically going to be about 3 different flows, like an initial sun A flow for the most part that might build around either a mountain pose. And then with that, like I said, I'll maybe throw in some back bends if we're doing more side body stretching, maybe just grabbing onto the wrists and opening up through the sides, or even just some standing twists. Um, Otherwise, I've done, instead of a sun A from a mountain, stuff working around a low lunge. And then from there, I could do the same thing, the low lunge with your back knee grounded, taking a mountain, or hands high, taking your back bend, reaching up, and maybe moving into like a standing split, or I'm sorry, a half split, and then a twist. So it's just like 3 or 4 movements that'll feel really good together that are easy to connect and move without needing to necessarily like reset your feet or your foundation. So that way, at least to me, that has just made it a little easier. And the Sun B will just be a little more involved, whether that's building off of a chair pose or a crescent lunge or like a warrior 2 or warrior 1. Just something where I'm setting the feet, and then from there, it might be like a movement from your toes to the heel grounded, or from your heel grounded, lifting up back onto your toes, and just like switching the feet as opposed to having to readjust your complete foundation once you get it in there and once we start moving. Um, so those are, yeah, the different things that at least I like to keep in mind. And with vinyasas, obviously, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. What I've been trying to do now, just to not just to get more creative, but just allowing people to try something different instead of moving back through a traditional plank chaturanga up dog to down dog to kind of, whether that's starting at the back of the mat and kind of just, or the front of the mat, but moving from, let's say, a chair pose. And from a chair pose, a popular posture here is like a drinking bird where you come up onto your toes. And you're on your tiptoes, and then you sweep your hands back, but you're coming at it from a chair position. And then from there, taking it to an inhale, maybe grounding a foot into a single-legged Tadasana. And then from there, stepping back into a lunge with your arms down. And then from there, building a sequence, moving. And instead of moving through like a lunge into plank chaturanga, I'll just have them step back up to the top of the mat, and then we'll just keep moving through it and just take it to the next side. Yeah, and that's just been different to provide for students, like, let's say, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes of just steady, constant movement without it feeling like too rushed, but you're not necessarily getting the break. So it's another time, another opportunity for students to, all right, we're not worrying so much about getting it wrong or right. All we're doing is trying to just keep moving and just staying with our breath. It doesn't matter how slow you're going, doesn't matter. I'm not trying to make anyone rush, but we're just trying to move, just trying to keep things going. And then once we get the break, then it's like, okay, like let's really be still for a moment, whether that's meeting in a standing pose, meeting in a child's pose, and giving people the opportunity to really sit and feel what it was like to get everything swirling, to get everything moving around them, to notice their heartbeat, to notice what's going on with their breath, if it's faster, if it's slower, and then really allowing them that space to kind of just like tap in and ground. And that's, yeah, at least that's how I've been approaching and teaching those two different styles. But I will demonstrate. It's going to be hard here, but let's see how this goes. So, an example of a little sequence that I like to, that I play around with just because it's very easy to incorporate a bunch of different postures into it, is, so let's say from a down dog, and this will be the Hatha variation first. So from a down dog, say lifting your right leg up, and then as you exhale, stepping to the top of your mat. Then here, setting your feet, left foot grounded, right foot grounded, and from here, press down and rise up into a warrior one. So if I was cueing the warrior one, I'd say back foot at about a 45-degree angle. And then you're pressing down using the entire backside of your foot and really engaging here through your quads. So you can press your left hip forward. And if you need a wider stance, take your right foot out. So this way you can square your hips up to the front of the room, right knee over your right ankle. And here you're still pressing down and you're squeezing your feet into one another, keeping a slight tuck here in your tailbone. And from here, taking your hands high. And if this variation doesn't feel good, you can keep your hands to heart center. You can reach your hands a little wider, or just finding whatever works for you. And from here, as you breathe in, feeling the lift in your chest, and feel your navel snap to your spine. So this way, everything's strong and supported. See if you can get a little more opening here across your chest. And so in a Hatha class, I would have people stay here for a moment. So really feeling this posture out. So it could be anywhere up to a minute, maybe 2 minutes. But just enough to, all right, they're starting to feel something. Maybe there's going to be some discomfort that comes up. And if that starts to happen, just really speaking to finding what works best in that moment. It's like if you need to modify from here, go ahead and modify. You don't have to stay in that posture the whole time, but notice what it is that starts to come up for you. So I'm from my warrior one, after we've been here for a few breaths, maybe gazing up to the hands, and from here take a back bend and cactus your arms. And here opening across your heart. And then as you breathe in, straighten your front leg and reach your fingertips up to the ceiling. Now from here, we're taking it to a pyramid pose. So here, keeping your hips square, still pressing down, squeezing, lengthening through your spine. And if you need to, bending your right knee. And that's a good spot here for blocks as well. You can bring blocks to frame your front foot. Maybe even just bending your knee and bringing your hands to your shin, your ankle. And your pyramid pose, lengthening the spine and sinking a little deeper. So again, in a Hatha class, I just provide a little more information, give students a little more time to be here to really open the back line of their body. And then as we're getting ready to move on, keeping your left hand grounded, now lengthen your spine, also a good spot for a block for underneath your left hand. Then taking it to a revolved pyramid and opening your right arm up. So option, keep your hand high, keep your hand on your hip. And in the Hatha class, same thing. Here, focusing on lengthening the spine, and it'll help. If it's hard to lengthen the spine, bend your right knee a little bit deeper. Just really lengthen, twist, open your chest, and expand wide if you've got it. And here, take one more breath in. And as you breathe out, both hands down to the floor into a low lunge. And three-legged dog, take your right heel back up. And if you need to shake it out, shake it out. Now when you exhale, go ahead and ground back into your down dog. So for a Hatha class, so like I was saying, I'm going to stretch that time out to really be in the poses, to really open up, to really start strengthening, to really start feeling the posture and what's going on in your body. And that way, with that time, with that space, allowing students to feel it for themselves, to make those decisions, giving them the agency to feel what they need to feel, to move what they need to move, and to just really start to experience the pose and what it means to listen to their body. We're in a Vinyasa class, you're still listening, it's just a little, with all that movement, sometimes you don't have the time to really refine a pose. So teaching a similar sequence, the way I would do it in a Vinyasa class. So let's say that was the first time through, everyone has a little more information. So we'll start with inhale your right leg up, three-legged dog, and exhale, step to the top of your mat. As you breathe in, rise to your warrior one, plant your feet, squeeze in, lift up, look up, back bend, cactus your arms on the exhale. And inhale, straighten your front leg, reach up for the sky. Pyramid pose as you breathe out, taking your belly all the way down to your thighs, fingertips to the floor. Let's hold here for a breath in. Sink a little deeper as you breathe out and ground your left hand. Inhale, lift and twist, reach your right arm up to the ceiling, revolve pyramid. And exhale, low lunge, both hands down to the floor. Inhale, step back to a plank. And exhale, chaturanga. Up dog on your breath in. Down dog on your breath out, moving right into the left side. Kick your left heel high. And exhale, step to the top of your mat. Inhale, rise to your warrior one, strong in your base. Back bend, cactus your arms, open and lift your chest. And inhale, back, fingertips to the ceiling, straighten your left leg, and exhale to your pyramid pose. Stay here for a breath in and lengthen. And exhale, sink deeper, keep your right hand down, and inhale, lift and twist, left hand to the ceiling. And exhale, low lunge, both hands down to the floor. Inhale to plank. And exhale, chaturanga. Up dog, breathe in. And down dog, breathe out. And take an inhale. And exhale. And breathe in. And out. And then from there, taking, usually with the flow class, I'll go and move it anywhere from, let's say 2 to 5 times, just depending on what it is that I'm trying to do for class or what the style is that day, or whatever it is that I'm working on or trying to get students to work towards. And I know that those are, so even in the Hatha class, there's going to be some elements of the flowing, depending on like the teacher, and those distinctions of just a slightly longer pose holds for a majority of the class is kind of what I would look for or what I would expect personally out of a Hatha class. And a Vinyasa, I would just not prefer, but I would just sort of expect or go into it thinking that there's going to be more elements of, not the entire class, but a good portion of the class itself is going to provide that space for more of that movement with the breath, as opposed to doing the entire class kind of like holding things just a little bit longer. And sometimes there are teachers that, and it's a good practice for me because I do find it difficult, just the Vinyasa that they teach is a little like slower paced, which is nice because it does still provide the breath to posture movement, but it also gives you just a little bit more time moving from pose to pose to really feel things out, where sometimes I can get kind of carried away and just wanting to, all right, my body's ready to move, like I'm going to move a little bit faster. Um, so yeah, that is how I approach or see the differences between a Hatha class and a Vinyasa class. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and we'll see what the rest of the group has to say. We'll see what are your thoughts when it comes to a Hatha class? What do you expect out of a Vinyasa class? And yeah, I'd love to see some discussion on that, on your approach, on your expectations. And I hope this was beneficial to you. Thank you so much for sharing your morning, and can't wait to interact with all of you soon. All right, take care.